All right, babe. What are we talking about today?
Today, we're going to dive into some communication and personal responsibility, but also in understanding the opposite sex and how they communicate. But also, you have a little secret to share with us from when you were a teenager and how you understood the opposite sex or learned to understand the opposite sex.
Yeah, there's a lot of secrets from when I was a teenager, but
We don't want to know
we
them
don't
all.
want to know all of them.
No, please no. God, no.
Sounds good.
1, 2, 3, 4.
You're listening to the Revive Couple Podcast. We're Michael and Laura, and together we'll explore everything relationships, personal responsibility, feminine and masculine dynamics, communication, and just some all-around real and raw conversations.
Drawing from our 18 years together with a bit of sarcasm, humor, tears, a few f***s, and lots of love, we deep dive into the male and female perspectives on relationships and navigating the highs and lows of life together. Sit back, grab your love mug, and let's get into today's conversation.
All right. It feels like it's been forever sitting here talking to you now because we're big remote podcaster guest people, I guess.
It has been a long time since we've sat here. I forgot to look to see when the last time we sat here and talked together. But yeah, it has been a really long time.
Yeah. I mean, I have it set up pretty good. So I come down here and talk, but there's still the odd thing that I got to do. And I forgot my system. Just
Didn't know what to do.
Oh, wow, this is different. But anyway, we're here. I really like the topic that we got on the go today. So it's kind of driven by everything that we've learned in the past year, right? Talking to all these people that we have.
Yeah, well, and that's what I was going to say. The reason it's been so long since you and I have sat down and had a conversation is because we went on this big spell of having chats with other people. So I interviewed a few ladies and you interviewed a few men, and the topic that you were really intrigued with and kind of going down that path of was, well, I guess you also talked to women as well, but kind of more like the entrepreneurial woman and her journey and what that looks like and how men can support her. And so you talked to both, spouses, the men, and you've talked to women as well. And we were saying that there's one key factor that kept showing up in all of the areas, right?
Well, it was. I kept talking to people and asking them questions, and it always revolved around the same thing, and everything kind of came back to communication. It was always that key. There's little nuanced things for each person, kind of like their own avenue of entrepreneurship, but the big tying factor was communication. It was always that one, which, I mean, it's like that with everything, right? And everyone talks about communication, but until you actually sit down and get granular with it with people and asking certain questions and where it fits in, it's this really is all that matters. It's you get that communication part down. I mean, obviously there's things in the background, but that's I don't know. I couldn't put a percentage on it, but I mean, it's a very key factor to a lot of things, making business work, making relationships work, making anything work.
Yeah. And I think communication episodes that we've done in the past are our higher downloaded ones, where there's the word communication in the title. Those are our most downloaded episodes. So I think some people are aware that they need to learn how to communicate better. And then I think other people are have no idea, just know that something's not right, things aren't flowing well, I'm unhappy, or no, this could be better. But maybe don't know that learning to communicate effectively is such a key foundation for either growing your relationship or your relationship going backwards and, spiraling down into resentment and different things that we hold on to when we're not able to communicate, the way we're feeling or what we would like to share effectively, but then also not listening to our partner or creating space for that for our partner either, right?
Absolutely. And listening is the biggest one for me from a male perspective, because like everyone knows, right? Guys, we want to solve the problems. We always want to have the fix. We want to get to that end result as quick as we can. And it's just that driven factor, right? So we don't take a lot of emotions into, most men anyway, don't take a lot of the emotions into consideration. Whereas obviously you can speak to that, but I mean, that's where a lot of the feminine comes from, right? Is all emotional, or a lot of it is emotional, right? So there's big things in that. And I tell every guy I talk to, it's like the listening, you just shut up. I mean, it's really simple, right? Like, shut up, listen. Obviously, there's certain things to listen. Like, I mean, there's a whole acronym for listening, and we get into that a lot on our courses and even the mini course that we have coming up. But it's just simple things, right? Like, give cues that you're listening, give feedback. But I mean, don't try to answer the question, or don't try to answer everything. Don't have the
Don't fix it.
solution. Don't fix it. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that you said that, because I think that the basis of communication is that men, like you just said, communicate differently than women communicate. And I was going to say earlier that, of course, there is deeper things going on in relationships, but you can't go to those deeper things if you don't know how to communicate, right? So that is something for sure that we go into Safe and Wild, where we talk about. That's our course for couples. I was say couple for courses. We do go into that deeper in teaching communication skills, but then we also go into the deeper foundational things as well, that help you to understand why you communicate the way you do, or why you maybe hold back the way you do, or maybe why you overspeak and overshare and different things like that. But just hearing you speak, I'm like, yes, this is the important piece that I never knew growing up. I do always think about that book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, it's called. I mean, I remember seeing that and hearing about it all the time in the 90s, but
Yeah.
I never read it.
No, I've never actually read it
We probably
either. We should read it. But we should read it, because I actually have zero clue, but I always just have that title pop into my head, because when I think about like feminine and masculine and communicating, I literally think of that title, because I'm like, yeah, we are from different planets. And I think that if people understood that, it would just make life so much easier. Like, we're not meant to communicate the same. We are different genders. We have different roles. We have different feelings. We just are different people. And so I think when we come in expecting something from each other that we're not getting, you can't go into the deeper things that you actually want to talk about in your relationship, right? Like the surface level things, or the deeper level things, or like that are problematic, or the things that you desire and you want to bring up. But again, you don't know how. I will just take a moment to say that I think I need to slow down in talking, because then I'm going to run out of breath.
Well, you're doing a great job, Laura.
We're at 37 weeks now. So the baby has dropped, and I do feel, this is a bit of a sidetrack, I do feel like I have more expansion in my lungs than I maybe did before. But if I walk upstairs or get talking too fast, I totally lose my breath. So I'll just try to rein in my excitement about this topic and like slow it down a little bit. Because where I was going to go next with that is that not only is it our personal responsibility to learn about ourselves and how we communicate, and, you know, from a feminine perspective, understanding that I can be like a hurricane of emotions. And when I begin speaking to you, I can like word vomit all over you. And as I express one thing, I'm reminded of another thing, and it's all emotional. So as I uncover, more comes up. But because I now know that about my communication style, and that you're not like that, I can honor myself in the things that I would like to say to you, but also respect you. And I'm running out of breath. Respect you and your communication style. So speaking of personal responsibility to not only recognize how I communicate, but taking an initiative to understand how you communicate as well, and honoring and respecting that. So that's what I meant at the beginning when I said, communication, but then also taking personal responsibility and understanding the opposite sex or understanding your partner and their communication style, because you obviously do the same thing for me, right? Like, I know I can look in your face and like when I'm just like spouting shit off and I'm just like, okay, it's flowing. But like, I know to ask you for permission. Like, is it okay if I keep talking about this? But sometimes, and the reason I will ask is because sometimes I just see it in your face. We were like zoned out, like beginning to want to zone out. Like you've been present and holding space for a while, but I kind of like overstep your, I don't know if I call it like a territory, but like your interest.
Yeah, well, no, there's like a threshold that a person can take. Yeah.
Yeah, you're like,
absolutely.
okay, I'm done. But like, I know to warn you that like, okay, this is a lot. I got a lot to come at you with and not to attack you with, obviously. Like that's kind of a situation that we talk about in the course as well for like just airing out stuff and feeling seen, feeling heard, because when you can process emotions and move forward as a feminine, then life is just easier. You're not holding on to all of that stuff. But then we also have like problem solving techniques within Safe and Wild as well, right? But when I'm just like airing things out to you, like I know to check in, like, is it okay if I keep talking about this? And generally you say yes. And I'm assuming that you must feel respected that I even asked that question.
Oh, no, it means a lot. I mean, I take a lot of, and like a lot of pride, I guess, and a lot of, I don't know. I've been working hard on my listening, right, for the past few years, and really making it an effort and really putting in an effort. So I really want to make sure that I am listening and I am present with that. But like you say, I mean, a person you can only take so much, but then when you do break it up 100%, it feels great to be like, okay, I understand what I'm doing. And I just want to make sure you're okay with that. And then like whether it's carrying on or stopping or whatever. Right. But at least you're respecting that, not just like straight off a sounding board and just beating that drum all day. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because then obviously the next time I come to, want to air something out with you. And when I say air something out, I'm not necessarily even meaning something about our relationship. Yes, maybe. But generally where we're at now in our relationship is pretty like, I just come to you to air out like the things I'm feeling or any fears I may have or just things I'm going through, right? But then we, like I said, we have the problem solving aspect. But where was I going with that?
Well, no, it works great. And I mean, from a man's perspective too, that we have to make sure, and I've been talking to a lot of guys about this, is that we have to make sure too. So, I mean, you obviously respect me, and then that, okay, I'm hitting that point of like, I'm losing them. I got to talk to him and bring him back kind of thing. And I know that you are that like feminine are, right? A hurricane of emotions, and you nailed it with uncovering things, and that's fine. That's great. I love it because you're in flow, and it's awesome to see. But then from the male perspective, we got to make sure that we don't do the same thing, right? There's a lot of guys that will do the same thing of just like spouting everything off to your wife or to your girlfriend, and that's not her job. So a lot of men, that's our job kind of thing, right? But females, that's not your job, because hearing all that stuff does not make you feel safe, doesn't make you feel protected, doesn't make you feel X number of things, right? I guess I shouldn't tell you how you feel, but I mean, I'm assuming that's what it is, because we have to be the rock in a lot of those situations, right? And allow our woman to be free and allow our woman to feel safe and protected. So we can't bombard her with all these little issues or like little decisions, little tiny minute decisions. Yeah, like you're going to talk about the big things. Like you're going to like those.
Yeah, and we want you to.
Yeah, like, hey, I bought you a house, babe. It's awesome. It's on wheels. It's great. You can go anywhere. But I mean, just like obviously houses, all that stuff, right? Big decisions, you're going to talk about your team, and that's what it is. But just don't hit her with all those little minute problems, the daily little mundane things, things that you're kind of wavering about or unsure of.
Or processing even. Yeah.
Or I mean, I guess that'd be the best way like to process, right? Like your woman's not that sounding board for you. You have to find an outside source, and make sure it's a protected source and a safe source. And you create that container, whether it's a men's group, whether it's a mentor, whether it's a coach, whatever that is. But that's what the men are for. And that's where we come from, right? Like we come from the hunting packs. We come from working all day, wherever we were, like out in the bush, out on the lake, whatever we're doing. But you had this group of men and different men, like you had younger guys, older guys, and everyone had different levels of experience. So you got stories from everybody, right? Like guys that are in it, guys that have been there, done that, guys that have done it 10 times, and everyone has a different perspective, and that's where you get the answers from. But we just lost so much of that nowadays, right? We just don't have it. But that's what we got to make sure that we're doing, with processing those feelings, those thoughts with our men's groups, our guys, and then we can come to our woman. But we come to her with either an answer or like two scenarios, and that's it. It's not like wavering on anything, right? Like you have the answer, at least you have the direction that you're going.
Yeah, I like the word direction, because for sure, as like a feminine woman, I want to know that, like, I want to see your vulnerability, but in certain areas, right? Like, you know, when you open up to me about feelings about your dad passing away, or just like how you're feeling about, well, if he was watching you right now, or, you know, seeing your life, that's different to me than if like there's any inclination that you're wavering in, you know, the direction of our life as like a provider and a protector. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get that. I do. And I talk to a lot of people about it, and a lot of guys just can't, they're right there, and they just can't figure out that switch, or like that step of getting away from that. And as soon as they get away from that, get a bit more confidence in themselves, whether it be in their body, in their mind, their ego, whatever that is. But as soon as they get that little shot of confidence, they'll be able to not need to bounce everything off of her. And then they can show up differently in the relationship. And then obviously she's going to light up, because she's like, oh man, I found the guy that's going to, you know, protect me and like get us through. And this is what I want to do. And it just like, it's so close, but a lot of people are just missing the mark slightly.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's right there. It's going to happen. Or, I mean, if guys really work and push at it, they can make that happen. And it just makes your life so much easier.
Well, and I think there where, like you said, getting around a group of men to like, what is that saying? Iron sharpens iron. Is that what it is? Like,
Yeah,
when you're not used to being around men of, you know, a different caliber, a higher caliber, or just different levels, like you were saying, or like coaches or mentors, then you're not really like seeing anything different or being pulled out of your comfort zone to grow in certain areas. And then you are just spinning in the same old patterns. And in this case, we're talking about communication with your partner. And I think a big thing to point out to, I think very specifically men, but also women listening, is that this is all an energy. Like, we talk about feminine and masculine energy a lot, which is kind of sometimes hard to wrap your head around. And we've been talking about it for a few years now and understanding it a lot deeper, but you're never going to understand it in like one podcast or really even like one course. But it's an energy that you feel that creates polarity within relationships. So everything you're saying, like, it's all action, because it doesn't matter what you say or don't say to me. It does. But it's an energy that I'm attracted to, or I'm either repelled against. So when you come to me with like you said, like two options of, you know, I've been thinking about either this job, or this opportunity, or this opportunity, or this course or this program, I'm like, oh, cool, let's talk about it. But if you were like, yeah, all over the place, then you're a feminine energy to me. And I'm like, well, you're like one of my girlfriends. We can chit chat it, and I can coach you, and I can help you move through it. But that like totally minimizes our polarity. And then I'm not like, oh, I feel like you're my big, strong protector. Like, I feel safe in your arms. Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I might've brought that like all back around in a weird way.
Well,
but
no, that's what ties it together. And I mean, that's really the underlying thing. And that's kind of what we want to talk about today, right? Is just that, is communication styles and communication, just knowing, like, there's not rules or anything to this, right? Life's life, but those are really good guidelines that have worked for a long time, like generations upon generations. And it just now, as things are really getting skewed in the past, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, 40 years, things are really kind of off on they're just off track, right? everyone forgets that we've been around for hundreds of thousands of years, or tens of thousands of years, I should say.
You've been hanging around Linux too long. 18 million?
Yeah, like 18 million
18
years.
million thousand cajillion years.
Exactly,
Just
right?
throw
But
every number
we've been
together.
around for a while anyway. So it's just lately that everything's kind of getting skewed and different. And I don't know. It's just, you got to stick with what works. And I mean, this stuff works and it makes your life, like I said it again, like it makes your life easy. It makes, or shouldn't it, easier, right? Like life's tough. There's so much stuff coming at you from all over the place, but it makes it easier when you have that team and you can actually communicate as a team, and then you can play to each other's strengths. You can, pick up where one's off, and it makes everything so much easier.
Yeah. And that's actually key, because it's like when most couples come together to communicate, it's like a me versus you.
Yeah.
In your mind, right? Like, I need to prove that I'm right. I need to prove that I'm right. But again, taking personal responsibility for your own communication style and understanding how your partner communicates, it takes away that like me versus you and creates an us, right? It's us against whether it's an issue or just a topic or whatever it is, right? It doesn't have to be negative, positive, empowering, disempowering, whatever the topic being. It's not you versus me, it's us versus it. And I think that that's like a complete game changer in mentality towards it, right? There was one more thing I wanted to say. Oh yeah. Also from the feminine perspective too, and taking accountability for self, I think, we talked about it's important for men to have coaches and mentors and whatnot, but we were talking about this the other day too, where I did straight up tell you, I was like, I feel like I kind of come across as like, I can come to you with anything, but you don't come to me with everything because I want to feel safe kind of thing, right? But I work through my own nervous system and I have to like feel safe in my own body and my own problems, and my reaction to certain things you would say to me, you don't, but you would be my own thing too, my own triggers and, stuff I'm holding on to from my past to work through. Which is why I think it's important to also note that, like, as a woman, I don't just come to you with everything either. And that could come from two ways. I was saying, it's like, I don't want, because we are in such like close quarters, I don't always want to just like share all my fears or like all the things I'm working through with you. Because for one, like, I don't want you to worry, let's say, or because we're so close, like, bring you down, even though like you're good in your energy. But then I was saying how like I can go really deep with my mentor and my coach, but more so because too, she's a woman who's been through what I've been through, and she can give me the mentorship and the tips and the advice that you can't give me as a man. And I will accept advice from her because I pay her, and I'll accept guidance from her because, again, she's been in my shoes and she can relate like on an emotional level to what I'm feeling and what I'm going through. And you can't always do that, right? Because you're not a woman. You didn't have the same feelings of me. And so I just think that's an important piece to point out as well as we talk about like, men having mentors and coaches. There are certain things which again falls into personal responsibility for both sexes, both feminine and masculine energy, to take personal responsibility to work through yourself or with a coach and a mentor, and then, communicate what you want, maybe what you've worked through or like a result or breakthroughs or transformations with each other if you want to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely does.
I hope you're enjoying the show so far. Let's hear from one of our graduates from the Safe and Wild course.
My husband and I have been struggling for about 10 years now since we met to have a good relationship, especially once we left the honeymoon phase where things weren't easy anymore. Communicating and letting go of resentments and intimacy were a few of our main issues that pulled us towards Safe and Wild. We loved how Mike and Laura flowed so well together when explaining everything, and that they laughed and joked along the way, making it fun to go through the course and learn new ways of taking on our marriage. We now communicate way better, which allows us to have more fun and spend less time being mad at each other. Safe and Wild gave us better tools to have a successful marriage and to be able to show our kids how to have one as well.
For more information, check out the show notes or check out therevivecouple.com.
Tell us your secret.
Oh yeah, you're gonna segue into that, or what? Or just like
No,
tell
just
us.
straight up tell us. And I want to preface this with saying that I've known you for 18 years. And I just found this out about you like in the last few months, I think. You told me and I was like, you're kidding, right? And you were like, no, I'm not.
Yeah, so I don't know how old I was. I can't remember when it started. When this started.
Just the suspense.
I want to say it was like 12, I think, or something. But
I just like don't even know who did this for you, who helped you.
what do you mean? Like, so what it is I had a subscription to YM magazine, and
I can't even believe you knew what YM
anyone
was.
in like late 90s, early 2000s, right? Or I don't know, is it still a thing? I don't know.
Couldn't tell you. I mean, if it is, it's probably just an online thing.
Because so it's a teen girls magazine, right?
Yeah, I don't even remember what it stands for. Young and Modern? No. I was thinking Young and the Restless.
I think it might even be that. Anyway.
I don't know.
So yeah, well, what happened was we're selling, like, every year you sell subscriptions in school, right? And then you get prizes for X amount of subscriptions you sell.
Yeah.
And we needed like one more I needed like one more or two more to like get juggling balls or some stupid thing. And I can't juggle. So anyway, so I wanted to get them. So mom was like, well, yeah, just get a subscription to whatever you want. She didn't like, well, for one, she wouldn't care what I did anyway, like in that sense, right? Like, so whatever, but she just like, yeah, whatever. I'll fill, like, I filled in the sheet, do everything. And then she just whatever paid for it. Yeah, pretty much like pay for it. And so it's like, oh, this looks interesting, because there was like two girls on the cover or something. I was like, well, sign me up. So check that box. And yeah, like I had that subscription for like a few years, I think. But anyway, so that's what, like, finding out about the opposite sex, or like digging into the opposite sex, like actually reading those books is like, or reading those magazines, like, oh, okay. So I can learn to understand things, right? Like at that age, I don't even know like if I knew what a period was or anything like that, right? So then learning about it, learning about like symptoms of it and like what girls are going through, and then their embarrassing stories around them. Yeah. And just everything with that. And then like, what else was there? There was like all of like makeup stuff and like fashion, but those were big ones, right? Like I shouldn't just say period, but there's like boys, all the stuff, right?
You
like
get into the girl's head.
Yeah, absolutely, right? And I was like, this is a secret weapon. It's like I was behind enemy lines. It's like, this is silly. Like, why wouldn't people do more of this? Because it's as hard as it is to believe, like I'm not much of a studier or a scholar. But like, why wouldn't you research this stuff, right? Like put energy into doing homework on that and learning the psyche of women and learning like how that all works. Obviously you can't, because people can smell bullshit a mile away. So you can't use that to manipulate anyone, because it just won't work. Like it'll come off ungenuine, and then it'll just blow up in your face, and you'll be like a weirdo. Like, the fuck has a subscription to YM, you weirdo? So you'd blow up on you. But if you just use some of that and just learn, right? And then you can understand where people come from, and honestly have a lot of empathy for women too, right? Like, or myself anyway, in those years of like, girls is like, oh, I'm on my period, and they're like, oh, okay. Like, I wouldn't like fucking shoulder to cry on, but like I understand what you're like, what's happening, right? At least
I read about this.
Hang on, I read about this. So it's just funny. Like, that's the big story. I don't know if it's really that crazy or not, but
I think it is. Well, I don't know. I would love to hear what other people have to say. I guess I was just shocked when you told me, for probably the bigger reason being that I never knew that about you. Yeah. But also, I guess because like I just assumed YM was for girls. I mean, me and my girlfriends had it, and we wrote in stories and hoped that they would get published. And I mean, we made up crazy. Maybe
I wrote or read about you. You never know the synchronicities.
Yeah, here we are years later. But anyways, I just think that it's really funny that you did that. And I just kind of think now, like, okay, Lennox is a boy. I'm like, and he's 5, but like, I don't know if I just find it interesting and be like, you want to get a girls magazine? Okay. And you know, for multiple reasons these days, I don't know, but I just find it interesting.
To be fair, some of my fashion back then, I mean, I was pretty, I guess, yeah, from the outside looking in, the more I think about it now, I was like, wait a second. But yeah, no, it was like, for me, it was like common sense, right? Like,
Well, and that's what I was going to say. I mean, it's funny and like to make light of it, looking back at like the 12-year-old you doing that, because I don't know. I just think it's funny and kind of shocking. But then like tying this into everything we just talked about on this episode, it's like a great parallel that, like take personal responsibility for understanding your partner as well, not only yourself, but also your partner. Because then again, this can go even deeper into like, as I begin to understand your triggers and your traumas and your childhood, just the same as you do mine, then we can respect each other on a deeper level. And that's just like a whole other topic. And we do touch on that stuff in Safe and Wild, but that would be more the things that we would work on one-on-one with people. But we definitely do touch on that in Safe and Wild. But again, it's just like the more you can understand your partner, the deeper you can go. So start with communication, start with understanding how you communicate, how they communicate, and then it just like opens up so much more.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you nailed it. And I think that's a good place to wrap it up.
Yeah. So let's just quickly talk on that. By the time this episode goes out, we have a mini course available, and it is on communication and understanding the feminine and the masculine, and kind of just break it down. It's nice and short and sweet. Break it down into simplest as we feel we can to still understand it, but not be overwhelmed.
Yep.
In understanding the difference between the feminine and the masculine in communication, and then some tips on what to do with that. So we'll drop that link in the show notes.
Yeah, that's perfect. It'll be down in the show notes along with all the downloads of this and everything else. However you listen, watch, all that fun stuff.
Yeah. Or you can go to therevivedcouple.com to find it there as well.
Yeah, perfect. Well, it was good to get back in here talking to you.
Yes. Thank you.
I enjoyed it.
I need to go catch my breath now.
Awesome. Well, thank you, babe. I love you.
Thank you. I love you too.
Love you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. Check out our offerings on social media at The Revived Couple and online at therevivedcouple.com. Have a request for a show topic? We love that. Send us an email at michael@larocklife.com or DM at The Revived Couple.
And don't forget to rate, subscribe, and review.